Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another one of these. Unfortunately, the three amigos are down to two because our good friend Tony has twisted his perineum and is currently bedbound for the foreseeable. But we hope the nurse we sent you leaps out of the card and kisses it all better, Tony. And try and keep your chin up. Chris, how are you?
I'm good. Perineum's all good, or whatever the phrase was that you used. Yeah, I'm handsome. Yeah, life is good.
For those of you with a medical degree, I've been rather naughty.
Yeah.
So lots going on at Spurs. Where would you like to start? Because I think you're a good man to lead us up the beach.
I think there is considerable confusion. Nobody seems to know, and there's a number of things that we will talk about in due course. But how about starting with the beginning of the week, probably Monday morning's announcement of Donna Marie Cullen stepping down.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Stating the obvious, it appears to be quite a twisted tale, depending on who you listen to. There are some people suggesting that she was supposed to step down last year, so this isn't such a surprise, and blah, 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 blah. And I've always maintained that THFC has the turning circle of the QE2, so I wouldn't be stunned for that to actually be a reality. There's also another tale doing the rounds that Daniel has managed to secure or safeguard his position by throwing Donna under the bus. Which again, given the way that the heartless operation that is ENIC operates, again is believable, certainly as a sort of as an option. But I wanted to ask you, basically, what is your take on how does it look to you? Because you're the corporate guy, you're Mr. KPI himself. I mean, how does it look to you? Does it look to you like an internal restructure before a takeover? Does it look like, because surely with the guy from Arsenal and hang on, sorry, my microphone is going. Jesus wept. Well, that's better. Does it look to you like we're being taken over, or does it look to you like internal jiggery pokery that's going on?
From the outside looking in, I'd certainly say that there's some positioning being done for either fresh investment into the club or a takeover. If you dispel the rumours from grown men hiding behind profile pictures of their favourite player, claiming to be in the know, it will quickly evidence that what they're generating is a load of old trash, and they're just peddling lies and stuff to get clicks and likes. You breaking a few things down. So Donna Marie Cullen, I had heard on very good authority that she to stay on. I was told on very good authority that Donna Marie Cullen wanted to retire last year, but she was persuaded otherwise by Daniel because she was his right hand lady, man, whatever you call it.
Biatch.
Yeah. So she was there putting the shots for him. So people like to get carried away. People like to think the best, and people like to twist something into a story it's not. I think it's generally the case of she's probably in her late suggests without stalking her via the medium that is called Google. So I think it's probably natural that she's decided she's had enough and she's going to hang up her boots and head on into the distance with a very nice pension to keep her in a very nice lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it, on the face of it, that looks just to be kind of it, that she's hanging up her hatchet and going to spend more time with her biological assets, be they children, grandchildren, and so forth. It's very easy to construct a narrative, but for me, and I know much less about the sort of high end of the corporate world, especially the more sort of real stuff, because as everybody knows, I worked in retail forever and didn't have that much to do with things. But it doesn't look to me like, I mean, you can't be buying a business, but then deciding that you're going to let people pick and choose who goes into which slots. You do it yourself. I mean, It's not just because and again, this goes back to the infantilization of everything that we've now been trawling through for the last few years online in relation to football coverage. The idea that you're going to buy my house, but you're going to let me decorate the rooms before you come in. This is insanity. And as you say, it marries very neatly with the mindset of a faceless Goomba who's got a picture of Romero as his avatar, and he's pumping out these thoughts, these voices in his head. Because we've all watched the makeup shows, we've all watched the changing rooms things. They don't want a feature wall like you've got behind you there. If you want to sell the house, they want beige walls everywhere. Yeah. Because you're selling a blank canvas, because the people coming in aren't you. And they may well find your choice of pictures, like this crud that I've got on my wall, some people might find it quite upsetting. Whereas you might come in, or I might come in and go, oh wow, that's Glenn Hughes. Yeah, I'll buy the house. You haven't looked upstairs. Yeah, I don't care. I'll buy the house. Love this room. That doesn't happen. The idea that Daniel's appointing X, Y, and Z and shifting around this Carrington or Charrington or whatever his name is, these are decisions for the people coming in, surely.
But equally so, the whole suggestion that this Peter Charrington asked Daniel Levy to sack Cullen is absolutely laughable. He is the chairman of the club. He owns 33% of the club. Like it or not, 33% of that train set, he is the controller of. So it's not as easy, specifically from hostile takeovers. You have to make before anything gets commenced. So
the problem with it's Daniel is exactly as you say. People are very happy to put this into sort of early learning center sort of mathematics. The reality is it's going to cost a lump of money to make him whole. That's a good business phrase used by the mob. Whole, in order for him to step away. And people, I just think that people are adding 2 and 2 together and getting 6. That's what I'm seeing everywhere.
You got 2 things here. You got this, which is the board, and the board is responsible for making sure the tier underneath delivers the strategy that the board sets. Yep. So you can't have CEOs sacking members of the board. It doesn't work that way. The board is people independently voted into those positions to hold court over the strategic performance of said organisation. So you can't have this Vinay chap coming in as a CEO. He is reportable in the long term to the board. And that's why when on boards, there's always an odd number to make it for voting purposes.
So somebody can win.
Yeah, exactly. Because you've got to conduct and transact the wishes of the business. So people are a bit blind and naive to that, and they creating a new empire and sacking people as he chooses. Certainly, it's going to be a reorganisation of the club in some way, but I don't think it's as cutthroat and there's as much skullduggery as ITKs or journalists like to think, because that gets us talking, it gets us clicking, and it gets us buying broadsheets. Like the other day, there were a load of suggested WhatsApp conversations that went around like wildfire.
Yep.
Sorts on Twitter and things, and you're thinking people are so gullible and so easily taken in by these things.
Well, don't forget. I mean, I keep bringing this up from the archives, but don't forget the original Twitter, shall we call it, before Elon, when the authorization came through from HSBC, the old Midland Bank, for part of their cash that they had to assemble in order to then cause the leverage to springboard the build of the new stadium. There were big accounts and huge volumes of accounts on online naming players that we were going to spend that money on.
Yeah.
Utterly surreal. Surreal. They may as well have said bottles of Malibu and vodka and brandy, because it was just the work of a child.
Well, can you remember when we've had our pants pulled down, being bent over the table and rigorously chuffed from behind in respect to the Emmanuel Petit deal when he was supposed to arrive at Tottenham and use our funded taxi to go and sign for Arsenal, and it happened again at Chelsea, didn't it? So if you are a serious club and you're operating in a serious marketplace, you do your business under the cloak of night, which was probably the best one for us was Son. We all woke up one morning and found that we'd signed some South Korean from a German club, but yeah, there were no murmurings or any releases of it. Who is going to name to the world that they're being acquired by potential Saudi Arabian owners who are going to bring 3.4 billion with them? All of a sudden, all your prices go up. So you don't show anybody what you've got in your pocket. You don't show somebody the size of your bank account, because you suffer the Man City effect, where all of a sudden an extra 20, 30 million is put on the price tag of any player you want.
No, absolutely, and I think the only thing I would add on the Sonny thing is that I had an excellent guy at the time, and he told me immediately, it was like the day before we signed him, that the Sonny deal was on. I was like, okay, where's that come from then? Because he'd been telling me everything. When we got the Magnificent Seven in, I had excellent knowledge coming through every bloody hour, and I said, well, what happened there?
They weren't magnificent, were they?
No, they weren't magnificent. They all ended up shot dead by they all ended up shot dead by Mexicans.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, and I said to him, where did this come from then? And he said, oh, the deal was already drafted out, because they had extra money. They went back and got him because the six or whatever it was had been so poor. They needed to spend more money, and he was the seventh name, and that's as Spursy as you want. The fact that the last guy that didn't make the cut, you go back and you say, well, we've still got tens of millions to spend. Well, we'll go and get that fella from Bayern, and that's exactly what happened, because the deal happened so quickly, because the documentation had already been done. He'd agreed, they'd spoken with the clubs, spoken with the agents. It just didn't happen. And then when they came back for him, they said to him, we're prepared to offer you the same terms. But you're absolutely right. I think it needs to be done by the cloak of darkness, because something like this is too big. The ITK that I had, I stand by the fact that they've been making discussions, and there was or could still be a move in the summer. We're only in where we are. It's the 1st of June or 2nd of June or 3rd of June. Is it 4th of June? Here we go. So, the reality is that the summer isn't over, but I won't be peddling we're talking to somebody outside of the Saudi or the Middle East part of the world in September, October, because then the summer is gone. I understand that, but that was a legitimate thing. And like I say, where the information came from is exceptional, but not everything happens. You see, this is the other problem we have, is that on the other side of people who are aged 15 making up stuff or interpreting stuff poorly, all of these deals are so huge and complex. There are so many moving parts. And so you get the situation, like I say, there with Sonny, where something you could, if you had the information at the time, you could have wandered around saying, yeah, we're getting the South Korean, and it doesn't happen for a year, and that's the reality of the grown-up world.
There's potentially something's clearly happening. We won't be aware of it. Nobody will. The first we'll be aware is when it breaks in the worldwide news.
Well, don't forget as well that this is actually an operational business that we're discussing here. Okay, This isn't, like you said, the train said. And even if we weren't on the brink of selling, even if all of these deals come to naught, and we're still staring at Daniel Levy at the beginning of next season or the end of next season, wherever it might be, these things would have to happen, because Donna Marie Cullen doesn't live forever, despite her pact with the devil. So these things will transpire, and we do need a shake-up of CEOs. And this guy from Arsenal clearly is just like the Asian version of Daniel. Focus on the business matters, thank you. And don't use the F word too frequently, because we're not all about football. In fact, we're not really very much about football at all.
So every boardroom I've ever entered, every transaction I've ever been involved in, there's always been this magical thing, and it's called a non-disclosure agreement. And any blue chip organization worth their salt in will have a robust NDA. And I can tell you now that a lot of the things that are mentioned, you would never, ever, ever want to wish to break to the public, because if you're in breach of that NDA, there comes massive financial penalties, and to the point that you might never work in that industry again. Or if you work at Deloitte, a KPMG or somebody, and you let something out the bag, that's you done. You're done and dusted, never go be employed again.
Well, you got to bear in mind, and Spurs fans of a certain vintage will remember the luminary presence of Paul Kelmsley.
Yeah,
Kemsley. He ITK came out every week, because every week he went and got absolutely wankered in an Indian restaurant with his arm around somebody and his hand on a waitress's arse, revealed the intimate details of what was going on at Tottenham Hotspur. But that doesn't happen these days, you know.
Well, it does, and it's generally Joe Lewis doing it to one of his subsequently clears up big on the stock market, and then he gets himself investigated for something called insider trading, and the rest is all history.
Are you talking about the Joe Lewis Korean flag incident, which is due to come out in the courts in the next couple of months?
Yeah.
So we've got that on Sonny. Sam Wallace in the Telegraph says that he's very likely to be the big departure and the kind of anomaly, if you like, in the bagging area, in so much that we'll actually make a few quid from selling him. He's 33 next time he gets a cake.
The problem with Sonny is that our fan base is a little bit odd at times, and we are too sentimental and romantic as opposed to being logical. He's been at the club 10, 11 years. We've had the best out of him. Anybody who watched him last year could see his legs are gone. I'd have fancied my chances over 100 metres again, and I'm the wrong side of 20 stone. But we've got everything we can from him. We've got everything we can.
I hope your perineum's insured.
Well, yeah. So we've got everything we can from him. What's the point of flogging a dead horse? And if we go remain competitive, which we don't seem to be doing at the moment, we've got to be thinking about improving the team. We can't just have him because he brings, perhaps we will, because he brings a lot of tourists into the stadium, sells lots of shirts, and there's a great deal of merchandise to follow. But if you could get 10 or 20 million now for him, bearing in mind you've got the Son protege coming back from QPR, surely you'd be thinking of offering him.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult without being disrespectful, and we're not being disrespectful. We're just being truthful. He's 33. That's his next
trophy.
Yeah. I mean, we do need to, from a commercial viewpoint, need to replace him with another Korean, which we've kind of technically done. So who knows how that pans out, because he'll have to be good. Don't forget that all the Sonny hype wasn't hype. It was based upon a standout player. A player of excellence, you know.
Yeah, and that player also had a massive thing going in his favour when he was at the elite of his powers. He had Harry Kane alongside him, who would make anybody look good. Once Kane had gone, Son was looking around saying, "Where's that quality for me to link up with? Who's got that sense to play a ball through the middle, knowing I'll be running onto it?" Well, he looked at Richarlison, brain dead. Looked at Basuma, smoked too much of the stuff, and then he looked at Solanke. And you're thinking, God help you. I would feel sorry.
Maybe Solanke needs to smoke some stuff.
Well,
so did you watch the ABC documentary that was on? That's been doing the rounds in the last few days.
Is that where yours truly got a mention? Yeah.
They stole. Well, they helped themselves, because it was only a few seconds of one of my clips, and one of the guys this morning was very funny. He left a message on the thing saying that he said, "Surprised, what's his name? KRL 1882. I'm really surprised I didn't use one of your clips calling him thick, obese, or belittling his achievements in Scotland." Guess this was on broadcast pre-Watershed. But yeah, that was fascinating. There's an absolute worship of him over there. And I did a thing yesterday with our guy in Australia, which I know you and Tony would have absolutely refused to watch on emotional grounds, and quite rightly so.
But it was just like coming home to find your wife being serviced by another bloke. It's just not quite right.
She's only been unfaithful to me twice, once with the milkman and once with the Royal Household Cavalry. Boom, boom. But no, so the deal there was that because it was good because we spoke initially in the first tape about this fine mess we got ourselves into, and then this was like the aftermath thing. So I think that's kind of wrapped up. But the deal with the Australian fans that I've had in the last 10 days has been extraordinary because we've been making, because things are tough, we've been putting out more content, putting out different channels. And as I said to everybody before, anybody tells you they're doing all right is lying because the whole thing's crashed and flatlined like never before. And but the Australians, they don't want to hear anything. They're not interested. They're absolutely able to suspend their disbelief. And 22 games, shove it up your shifter, mate. You know, it's all about the trophy. And he's a legend and a club, and we don't deserve him. But the abuse has been off the scale, absolutely off the scale. But it's peculiar because the guy there, David, was telling me that the games are on. I mean, we all knew it was a different time zone, but they're on that the earliest game would be midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And then the latest game could be 5 a.m. So even if you were an absolute purist and wanted to watch the games and not drink, which I would find very hard going, I have to say. I'm not an alcoholic, but I am putting my hours in. You know, I'm not sure I'm retiring. But I mean, the idea that these guys are getting up to watch these games literally in the dead of night. They're simply not, and the Italian and the Australian press is portraying Ange as this, you know, this risen Christ. No wonder the species is a bit upside down.
Well, I've got to say, having struggled to stay awake watching Tottenham at 3 and 4 o'clock respectively this season, watching it at midnight would most certainly send me to sleep because it was less than entertaining or increase your heart rate throughout last season, did it?
So what do you think is going to happen with Ange? I mean, I know we've raised that spectrum before. It's just I caught my eye this morning, and this is classic Gold My Beer for Football London, and the headline reads: Tottenham's awkward silence threatens to derail crucial summer transfer push.
Is that shortly after Leroy Sané said, "Do I really want a team sign for a team who finished 17th last season and lost 22 games?"
Yeah.
No, thanks.
Well, you see, you're not allowed to mention that because we're bound to have I mean, some of the Australians we have on this channel are an absolute blessing, and I know there's Australian guys on the Substack. They're decent human beings, but if you try and pin that onto these deranged cuckoo Australians, that's exactly what they'll say. How can you possibly mention the fact that we finished in 17th and broke Premier League records for the volume of losses? But that's the reality. You're not going to. I don't think Sané is a particularly amazing player these days, but you're never going to be able to attract anybody of that quality with our current CV.
I think going back to replace him. If we go replace Ange, we need to get a wiggle on with it because it's becoming problematic the longer for him and us that nothing's sorted out. But if we are to keep him, then we don't need to announce anything because he remains contracted to the employment of Tottenham Football Club. Correct. And he's 3 seasons into a 3-season deal with an additional 4th year. It's like me having a performance review with you, H, and then announcing to the wider world that you've done all right, I'm going to keep you on for another year. Well, why should I? Yeah. Because it's nothing other than business as usual as you're concerned.
Correct, absolutely. And the reality is, I mean, one unhinged lunatic, and I can't even remember, it was on X, said that that Daniel Levy sent Ange into a spin and demanded that he came back early from his holiday. They were talking as if he'd gone to the bloody pub. He was like 20 minutes away in a car. I mean, it's the other side of the world. What can't be done on a video phone? You're out of your minds.
But people also forget that in this day and age of litigation, you've got to be really careful between the relationship between the employer and the employer, because if you do something out of usual, it's something unusual, or if you do something that you wouldn't do for anybody else, then you've got all sorts of problems. So you would be well within your rights to say you've not met the club through your league position, the amount of games you lost. So it's thank you, here's your payment for winning the cup, and off you go. But all of a sudden, there's too many people saying that Ange holds all the keys and he holds all the powers. What a load of nonsense. No name on the back of the shirt or somebody managing the club is bigger than the crest on the front of it. And
no, you're absolutely right there, because what you're talking about there, I'm sure you're aware, is customs and practices.
Yeah.
Which on a very basic level, and you cannot have an employee who's told you, for example, but I love to, these analogies which kill people, I know, but you cannot have an employee say to you, I have sold £10,000 worth of sweets today in my sweet shop. And the guy say, yeah, but you were also, customs and practices are that the head salesman is part of the security team, which involves you and your apprentice or whatever. We have been raided by shoplifters this week. So yes, we did sell £10,000 worth of sweets, but we lost £60,000 worth of stock because you were too busy yakking to Mrs. O'Reilly when she came in for a humbugs. And so, yes, well done, Angelos. You did win the Europa League trophy, but you also crucified us in the league. You've cost us money with our sponsors, and we're having real problems. And we had problems before you arrived. We're now having real problems when we talk to players like Leroy Sané and so forth. They're just laughing when we phone up and want to just talk to their agents, because they can't sell a club that nearly went down to anybody.
Yeah.
It's the damage that he's caused is irresponsible levels, and the idea that you can just laugh that off, or he holds all the keys or the cards or whatever you want to say, is just nonsense.
So I read an interesting quote yesterday. Many on here will have seen it. It was Pedro Porro getting all defensive about Ange, saying the players have always been behind him. They've never been behind. They've always been behind him. So account for where you were for 22 games last season where we lost. For 3 or 4 of them, where it looked like playing football was a struggle or an effort for you, and you had no energy, motivation, or no desire to be in that shirt. If that's what you're giving for a manager who you're all behind, God help us if there was somebody you didn't like, because those performances were pathetic.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the trouble is, though, and this is going to be my kind of stock answer to all of these things, is that answer doesn't make any sense to grown-ups. But your average 12-year-old using Reddit will love that quote set above a picture of him going like this, looking like a warrior, looking like an Amazon, and say, he's my hero. Watch him cook. And it's fantasy, because the reality is he was in every single one, or let's go through the thing I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was in most of, if not all of the 22 games that we lost, where we looked completely discombobulated, looked completely out at sea, didn't know what we were doing, didn't have a strategy, no Ange ball, no nothing. So the idea that he's going rah, 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 it works well in a meme, but the grim reality of having to get up and do it 7 days a week within the terms of a football club, the framework of that, doesn't stack up. Not when you finish 17th, it doesn't.
Well, and that also started creeping out this morning, where I saw some stuff about CAA Base, who are the agents for Ange. Profile inquiries for Ange from Europe, across Europe, should he leave his post at Tottenham. Again, agents are there to serve you as their client. When you sell your house, you expect your estate agent to get you the very best price. If you accept a job and they say, so Mr. Hotspur, what are you currently on? You always add more as to what your expectation is for the new role. So
of course. Otherwise, you may as well sit where you are.
Yeah. Back in the 80s, when we were bopping our bit on the nightclub dance floors, when some cheeky little thing used to come over and try it on with us, we'd say, sorry, love, but I'm going home with that. Keep our options open, wouldn't we? So an agent's there to represent their client and to maximize the income for both of them. So again, absolute nonsense. If you could tell me a top 10 European club who wanted Ange Postecoglou, I'd be very interested, because I can't see any from where I'm sitting at the moment.
Can I just, on behalf of Tony, while we're discussing which European club wants Ange services, give us a quick pigs in space, because it's complete fantasy, absolute nonsense.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the idea, I mean, Ange was coming out, and again, this was, you could, from the hand of his agents, with this absolute piffle about my future's bright. You know, I'm going to have to wear shades. Don't worry about me, Miles. Mate, nobody's concerned about your future because you're not in demand. You're not the beat. You know, you're a bloke. Yes, you won a trophy, but nobody who's a CEO of a serious football entity is looking at him and thinking, I wish we could have a dalliance with relegation and win a cup after beating 15 pretty threadbare sides. Well, nobody's woken up and said that.
Well, there was a photo of Ange the other day, supposedly, whilst he was on his holiday, and it looked like he was moonlighting on a place in the sun. It was as if he was trying to sell somebody a 3-bed semi-detached on the Algarve coast or something. I've never seen something so ridiculous for a supposed elite-level professional manager.
But you've got to bear in mind, though, that this is a celebration of a fantasy image, because this guy comes from generations, and he's very, very typical. He's very typical of the population in Australia. And I'm not denigrating these people at all. I'm just trying to give people a broader view, because I didn't have a clue up until very recently. And talking to David yesterday gave me more of an understanding. This guy, this racial mix that he brings to the party, the Cypriot Greek childhood, coming as a refugee, this is one of their own, and I totally understand that they're proud of him. They're as proud as punch, because the guy who owns the local garage looks like him. The guy who works in the local school, be he the caretaker or the headmaster, looks like him. And they're very proud of the culture and the tradition, and it's about coming there and getting on. It's a bit like the American dream, that they've brought people who were a little bit on the low side, didn't have much money, but they had ambition and they had hopes, and he's done very well. He's come to Europe, and he's not come away with a footprint on his backside. He's achieved whatever we want to say, as you know, adding context to the achievement is another matter, but he has achieved. And so the feeling of well done, mate, and good on you, mate, and all that other sort of language, that sort of bonhomie, that's gushing. So the idea, he's wandering around with his sunglasses on, the short sleeve shirt with his blonde wife, and like, as you can see, we've got loads of scatter cushions, mate. Tons of scatter cushions. I mean, I'm traveling first class on the scatter cushion front.
Can you remember that drinks advert where the bloke was walking down the beach, and was it Guinness
Southern,
or something?
Was it Southern Comfort?
Yeah,
he had orange buggy smugglers or something, didn't he?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Absolute classic. That's what Ange at this moment in his time is probably doing.
After being rubbed copiously in factor 80 and putting on his gold chain and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
No, I think absolutely right. So they're allowed to celebrate, but he is literally one of their own. But how will they feel? First of all, there's the decision: will Spurs roll the dice with him again? I'm inclined to believe, because what I pass on to people is separate from how I think, because I'm not making up the stuff that I pass on. I'm inclined to believe that Spurs will run again with him, simply on the basis of what we've said there, because PSG aren't, or Inter, like in Ghazi or whatever, he's gone to the Middle East. There are clubs, I mean, whoever these cuckoo land agencies think that Ange is a good prospect or a good fit for somebody, this is baloney, absolute baloney. But so moving from that neatly on, and I've been waiting for this to come through, and it's come through today. The Super Cup.
One moment. I think we can't finish that part of the conversation without acknowledging the absolute masterpiece that was Rafael van der Vaart this week, with his
wow.
The Europa League final was horrible. It was the crippled v the blind. If you would have set a rule where each team gets a goal for completing 5 passes in a row, it would have stayed 0-0. That is a seasoned professional who not only wore the Spurs shirt but flourished in it, and he won most of the trophies across. And he says what we're all thinking.
That's a bitter pill for a lot of Tottenham fans, because he is one of our own. He's a player that came to us. He came to us and he loved us, and he's done plenty of telly and still refers to us to us as we, to echo AVB's ghost. And he's definitely one of the firm. You know, he's definitely like in the Steve Perryman category, the Gary Mabbott category of warmth and affection that the fans have for former players. He's not in the Steve Sedgley category, you know, and so for him to come out with that is brutal, nothing shy of brutal. But speaking of brutal, the odds have been released for the Super Cup.
Go on.
PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, 1-3 on, and Spurs are 6s. How do you like them apples? That's horrible.
It doesn't surprise you, does it?
That is horrible. You could drive 2 articulated lorries through the gap between those two prices. You know, that's really nasty.
What amazes me is there's people who seemingly appear comfortable with letting Ange retain the reins when we all saw what he was capable of last year. And this season, we're dancing with men. We're not dancing with kids as we were in the Europa League. So you look at what PSG did to a decent Inter Milan side on Saturday night.
Inter aren't rubbish. Aren't rubbish.
They came up against a team that just tore them to shreds. What do you think they're going to do to us next season? Oh, and
your business about being up the chuffer bent over a desk is that's a very, very poor imitation of or description of the true Cromwell Road state of the abuse that's going to go on.
Shame on those at the club who thought the PSG coach wasn't up to the job when he was in the mentioning and in the running to the coaches. Somebody there had the audacity to think, nah, despite having done it for Barcelona, despite having done it regularly as a midfielder for Spain, tell you what, we'll give Ange Postecoglou the job as he's been doing it in the exotics and the tropics and of Raw FC and Glasgow Rangers. Good.
I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say the exotic parts of Waverley Station in Edinburgh. Yeah, but no, I mean it's mind blowing. But don't forget though, let us not forget. This is the same football club that sacked Jose Mourinho
a week before.
And I'm talking about his CV. I don't care if you don't like him because with feelings, but sacked him 6 days before a cup final.
Yeah, and sacked Martin Yole at half time.
Yeah, and put Paul Mitchell, who is again a global footballing doyen, on 18 months or 16 months gardening leave.
But where you're playing Russian roulette with the season ahead is if you start the season with Ange, I bet you now he doesn't finish it. But equally, all of the transfers that come in, whatever they look like during the summer, are going to be players that he wants. And when he inevitably goes, as he will go, he won't be here this time next year. And when he has gone, somebody's going to come up and be picking up the pieces. And what a mess it will be. From the outside looking in, we're hearing all these terrible things about the football club. But their biggest issue at the moment is their silence. That's where you need strong communications out of any organisation. Keep your customers on side. Keep them aware of what's happening. If you don't, you lose them. And that gets out to the world via the world's media. And you have players who potentially may have been interested, and now they're thinking, I don't want to go anywhere near that place. It's poison.
Well, I mean, I had a sort of flashback to my previous life when I was looking at the new kit release of the new home shirt, and I know nobody wants my opinion on it because I'm not the demographic. I don't like you. If you and I wear a Spurs shirt, we look like a couple of darts players that have eloped. Do you know what I mean? But the reality is that is a naff, cheap-looking shirt. And what you're going to get with that is a lot of buyer remorse, because I have never seen such. They've clearly brought somebody in to take some very poncy photographs. I know the marketing is always they try to get it as point and on, but they would have been better off having that shirt like they did with the guy from what was that thing set in Wales, Gavin and Stacey.
Yeah,
they would have been better off with putting that shirt on somebody that was half respected as a Spurs fan in the public domain, and just hoping that did it, because that shirt. And what's with the second shade of blue?
Yeah,
That's not a Spurs blue. It's you have midnight blue, the really dark, almost like London taxi black. It's it's dark blue,
if
the
I'm
navy, and then
if
this
I'm
other blue. It's so wishy-washy.
if I'm being perfectly honest, a Tottenham shirt's the least of my worries at the moment. My worry is who's going to be coaching the team over the forthcoming season, and when we start getting a shift on the transfer market, because we were told that whoever lost that Europa League final were going to be in all sorts of dark, horrible places.
Yeah.
And then look, Man United have signed Kuna from Wolves for 65 million, and they're
Chelsea.
supposedly on the verge of landing Brian Mbeumo from Brentford for another 50 to 60 million. So all of a sudden they've found 120 million. Just imagine the dark place we'd have been in if we'd have lost that and we wouldn't have made any signings at all. Oh, sorry, we're in that same place at this moment in time.
Well, that's why I drew to your attention that absolute baloney from Gold My Beer.
Yeah.
The fact that the silence from the club was influencing the transfer activity. Do me a favour.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that if we'd have confirmed Ange, who delivered 17th in the Premier League last season, yes, he won us a trophy, we understand that, but 17th, the bread and butter, you can't slice and dice it. There isn't like, oh, yeah, because nobody, realistically, I don't think there's anybody out there apart from the absolute devout Levy sexualists who are happy to finish in the top 10 in order to be on the gravy train for Europe, be it 5th or 6th or 4th or whatever. All of us want to at least see silverware be lifted. Of course we do. But who's going to come to a club? Who's going to come to a club that skirted relegation? It doesn't make any sense.
The unforeseen Europa victory should be acting as a catalyst, and it should be making us reassess where we're at. We should be adding some proven quality, not going for those prepubescent embryos that we've specialised in signing in the past. Then this morning I pick up the rags and read that we're interested in a 17-year-old American left back. I'm
get out of it.
Have we not learned anything since the Yedlin?
Yeah.
We need to be getting those established players through the door. We need to be getting those experienced players for the now, not the future. And it's that whole, an unforeseen opportunity has presented itself, but we don't seem to be grabbing it. We don't seem to be moving forward. If we had a plan and we could see that plan being fulfilled, we'd be happy. But at the moment, nobody's got the slightest clue what's going on.
That kid from the MLS looks to me like exactly the sort of player that a new executive would present in a folder to Daniel Levy, knowing he ticked all his boxes. But from a footballing perspective, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it could be marvelous. The kid could go on to be better than Pele, better than Lionel Messi. Who cares, though? That's like saying, look, I know I haven't got much money for dinner, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy us a couple of scratch cards. Because I could win up to £150,000. I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to keep my £4 and I'm going to go and get myself a Happy Meal.
Well, we've been there before when the MLS was taking off and we signed DeAndre Yedlin and we got him from Seattle Sounders. He played one game for us, then went off to Sunderland, and I think he played over 100 games for Newcastle. But again, whatever this backroom looks like, what's happening to my favourite bloke, old Scotty Munn? He seems to still be there in the mix, picking up a healthy paycheck, thank you. And then what's going on with another one we've skirted around, but we've lost a first-team coach, Ryan Mason. Good luck to him, going down to West Brom, which I do not know how he's landed that job, because in the West Midlands, the Baggies remain a massive club who are long overdue a return to Premiership football. They get massive crowds every week and they're well supported. And this isn't being cruel to Ryan, but I just wonder how he has got that opportunity when there's got to be more seasoned managers in the lower leagues who I don't
get it. I don't get it at all. I've got friends of mine who are boing Baggies fans, and they are as bemused as we are. The only thing I will say is, to their credit, they don't have particularly high aspirations. The club has got a ton of debt, but it remains a big side in that part of the world. I mean, it's where I live. I live in the West Midlands, and so it's not like I'm guessing. And I go to my local, and there's lads in there with baggies, shirts, the occasional West Brom tattoo. Goodness, God help us! But these guys live and breathe it. And that, I mean, you talked about Spurs, and all you get is, "Oh, your stadium's amazing. Your stadium's amazing." So they're operating on a different level, which I totally respect. They do understand their football, but they love their football, and they will expect, because he's come from that there London, they will expect to get some value for money. Irrespective of what Ryan is being paid, they will expect better than mediocre.
3-year contract, that's pretty good as a first job there. And the only hope we can see is that some of these players that Ange has been reluctant to play, maybe Ryan will take them off as, maybe give them a blooding in the Championship at a fairly decent level. You think about Donnelly, who's been out on loan, and Keeley, who've both been out at Leyton Orient, good loans. Let's see how they get on that level up in the Championship. Throw them there for a season. So
maybe they've all had enough of Ryan.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, Ryan spent an awful lot of time with his ear to the glass on the wall and reporting back to Daniel. I'd be interested to know how cozy the relationship is between Ryan and anybody working in and around footballers at Tottenham.
And of course, we've lost our go-to guy for the next interim Spurs manager. That guy who keeps on coming back like a boomerang, always in our hour of need. Where is he? He's gone.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that Spurs knew this was one of the problems we had with the whole business of would Ange survive the season. Mathematically, we couldn't go down from a certain point because the guys beneath us were so devoutly poor. But also we knew that Ryan Mason has a shocking track record, even as an interim manager, and the confines, the limitations that role means at Spurs, because things have already gone down the poop chute. So whoever you bring in isn't going to be able to do anything particularly masterful. So I think it's a miraculous job that he's managed to pull that off. I mean, I don't have it in for the guy. I think he's a bit of a weasel because of he's obviously been our man on the inside of the changing room. But that's another positive though. Like getting rid of Donna Cullen, getting rid of him, that's another positive, because any business needs fresh blood, fresh meat through the door, especially at the top of the tree.
You lost Chris Davis last season to your neighbours across the town in Birmingham. He got promoted, won the league,
and he's done a brilliant job there.
Yeah, and now you've lost Ryan Mason. So bit by bit, his coaching staff have been torn apart. And who was the other one I saw when Paul Bracewell was the ex-Sunderland? So Paul Bracewell's gone, and he was a coach's coach. He knew football. He was good at working with the young players. So all of a sudden, you look at who's left. You've got Rob Birch as the goalkeeping guy. You've got Miles Jedinak, and you've got one or two others. And you look at what we've spoken time and time again about. You look at the calibre of their CVs. They're pathetic. Nick Montgomery. These aren't men who are going to lead you on to further successes. You need to be surrounding yourself by the top up-and-coming coaches. Because, again, Ange is 60 this year. People don't last forever. God forbid something happens to him and he's unable to make it into work for a week. Who is your...
Careful, we'll get the blame for that.
Well, no, I'm talking for
no, absolutely
perspective and a crisis management perspective. Who do you trust the keys to the safe if he's not there? And I'd look at any of those and I would absolutely be fearful of giving those keys to anybody.
Well, I mean, I had a Jewish comedian the other day, and the two businessmen who was telling this, two businessmen are locked up, and Ebby turns to Cohen and he says, I've left the safe open. And he turns back to me and he says, no, it's okay. We're both going home. That's the problem at Spurs. It's your people around you that you can't trust. Yeah. You know, the idea that the burglar might get in is the least of your worries. So, but no, I think fresh meat in the Spurs boardroom is a positive. And I don't think it necessarily tallies and aligns with the idea that we're going to be taken over next week, though.
No, what was that baloney I sent you, the group, you and Tony, the other day, which was so far predictable, it was unreal. It was about... Was that
the German woman with the candle?
No. That That was in memory of Sticky Vicky. Some of the older viewers might remember her. No, it was what was it? Basuma. How apparently Ange had about turned and thought, based on what? Because that game against United, he was no better than the rest, and they were all terrible. It was a game
awful.
of attrition. And again, this would be a typical Tottenham thing. Oh, let's give him another go, as opposed to reinvest and get fresh meat. We need new ideas. We need new voices in the changing rooms, and that would be so typical of that bloke. But look how he treated him when he, rightly or wrongly, got in trouble with the club for smoking something he shouldn't have or should have. I don't know.
Well, no, it's illegal. It's illegal. I mean, I see on the streets in Birmingham, they have the empty big canisters, the gas things. So that's not because workmen are chucking them out before they drive the van home. And these things, you can't do it. It's a verboten thing. And the idea that a professional footballer does it is exceptionally daft. But you see, this is like going back to, like I said before, in the rag trade, you would buy stock and some of it simply would die a death. So what do? Do you hang on it? Because I used to work with a guy who would hang on to stuff forever, because he looked at that and he saw that if you use the multiplier, your £100 worth of stock was potentially worth £400 or whatever. So he's looking at it going, there's 400 quid in there, there's 400 quid in there. And if you get sucked into that spiral of doom, what you need to tell yourself is get your 100 quid back and go again on something that somebody wants to take home with them. And you look at Basuma, he's not absolutely rubbish, but he can and frequently does let you down. Let's go again. Let's go again. We've only got to get 25 mil out of him or whatever it was. He won't have triggered any bonuses in his contract. The same with Lamella and all the rest of it. So all the Mickey Mouse numbers doing the rounds. Roll the dice. Let's go again. So the idea that Ange has made, I mean, these are the babblings of fools.
Yeah. And then I read something this week. We're in advanced talks for Angel Gomez from Lille, the ex-United player. And then I look, he's 5'5". No disrespect to small people or dwarfs, but they are not the engine room of your midfield. And I will maintain we need. Are you
sure he's not Jewish?
Not little people. The little people don't win leagues.
The chosen people.
He was just amazing. But
when was the last time you saw Aaron Lennon on the end of a cross with his head?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, that's the reality. So the idea that you're going to go for somebody that didn't work out in this division already, hello, wakey. You know, I mean, if you got Timo Werner let you down.
Would it be that he's free and he's English? Do you think those two things are quite high on the attraction radar there? And
but
then
it's another one.
And then I read another potential signing that got me a little bit aroused and a little bit excited, and I had to sit down and drink a cold drink. And it was
before the 6 week came out.
Yeah, Carl Walker-Peters. I was thinking, well, that's a name and a half, isn't it? And you think we have secure Champions League football, and unlike Villa, who went all guns blazing last season, we're just going to be like a wet fart in a paper bag. It will be a whimper.
Well, don't forget as well, that's an interesting piece of form that we've accidentally stumbled into the conversation there, because if you look at Villa and how they have behaved in the Premier League, in the division, and then see how that they only got passed off by PSG by a aggregate point. They weren't a million miles away from PSG when they played them. So the idea that Spurs are going to do anything, the bookmakers have got it nailed for this Super Cup. And I'll just add because you're like this. I saw a guy on Reddit, a couple of comments that made me laugh, because it's the incel central. And one guy said, well, at least we've qualified for the Super Cup.
Do you know another thing that makes me laugh massively is all the Ange sexuals and the incels, when they're talking about Ange's defeats, they will come up with, but they were only by one goal.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Yeah, it only took one bullet to assassinate somebody. That's not a plea. You know, you say, no, that guy shot him. Yeah, but he only caught him once in the head. Where are you going with this? But no, I mean, go on. Sorry.
Another humorous point that made me chuckle was that Red Bull Leipzig are asking for 4 million to sell Timo Werner permanently. They don't want him. They want rid. And guess what? We paid 5 million to rent him for the whole of last season. And
Brilliant.
Mind-blowing, isn't it?
Brilliant. So Daniel Levy overpaid for a guy that didn't work. Who'd have thunk it?
But Ange has this final say on every player, and he wanted him, only to then massively throw him under the bus after he failed to perform at Tamworth, and he was never seen again. I think he was last seen in Roswell.
Last seen out buying Nivea skin cream for Kulusevski, whose health and welfare had nothing to do with being flayed alive like a pit pony in a Dickensian, And then
one of the outstanding extracts from the last week was how we got done over in respect to the Lesotho deal through that clause to potentially buy that American midfielder.
Oh, the guy, the fact that hadn't worked out.
The small print. If you examine the small print, you'll see that was a clause that was never, ever, ever going to be able to be legally enforced. So we technically sold Lo Celso for something like 2.5 million or something pathetic.
Yeah. No, it was absolutely. It was a cul-de-sac of a clause that Spurs were wandering around doing the usual thing of, and when we sell him on, we're going to make lots of. No, it was never going to be enforceable.
3% of the transfer that he eventually goes for. You're like, who in their right mind would it agree to anything like that? It's like giving 50% of your house to somebody and saying, "When I sell this in the future, I'm going to give you that 50% of the revenue."
But I can only do it if you've had both your legs amputated.
Yeah.
That's the deal. So listen, we're coming up to the hour mark. I think I'm missing Tony. Nothing personal.
Yeah. It's just not the same.
It's not the same. This is the Three Amigos. And I enjoyed talking to David yesterday. I did, because it gave us a different perspective, because he is boots on the ground in Australia. And he is Jewish, and I think these are good, positive, hopeful things. But yeah, so this is in memoriam of our friend with his elongated perineum that he's having to look after.
We've never done a show previously at the 57th minute mark where we've not mentioned Fred Rose West.
Peter Sutcliffe.
Mentioned Charles Manson. We haven't mentioned
Adolf Hitler's barber.
Yeah, the Yorkshire Ripper. It's we're in danger of becoming a very family friendly and sensible show for once. And that's great.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think I take a lot of the flack for the depraved nature of our offering, but the fact that Tony wasn't here, and we managed to use the words of our illustrious current first team coach, navigate an hour's worth of material without mentioning serial killers, Nazis, or child molestation.
Tony does the grooming, and he takes abuse of your vulnerable nature inside.
Well, Tony, we have proved beyond reasonable doubt that you are a vital element of this project. If only by the fact that YouTube haven't threatened to pull the plug on us this week. Right, that's it for now. We're going to speak to you in due course, because we're going to keep these things coming in over the close season. And we're going to be a bit more kind of transfer rumor centric. But if there ain't nothing to talk about, you'll be stuck with us. That's it for now. Good luck. Keep it on. End.